if you think about Nashville's workforce, or if you think about the thing that people think of Nashville when they think of Nashville, kind of goes like this. You know, you go to a bar, you have a drink maybe at 5, then you go to a show or Bridgestone for an event. You leave that event, you go to dinner. After you go to dinner, you go back to your hotel, then you get up and probably do the same thing the next day. Now, those of us that live here don't do that all the time, but that is the Nashville experience. But what is behind me saying that, everybody that powers that experience is a shift-based worker, okay? So whether it's a valet, a server, housekeeping, attendants, so forth and so on, our industry in Nashville, before we get started, is heavily predicated on a core of healthcare, hospitality, entertainment, and leisure. Those industries have shift-based workforces. Those industries also need those shift-based workforces to not live so far out that they have to commute in. A lot of us had traffic problems this morning, but I'm bringing that all up to say, this is the phrase that I'm trying to get to. If we take care of the people that take care of us, things will take care of themselves. So think about that as we go further. It's a little too much of a simplification, but we're gonna get started from that standpoint. So from left to right, I want everybody to introduce yourself, just name and title. You guys have such a great perspective, so we want to use more time for that. But Dr. Henderson, why don't we start with you with name and title, and we'll come back around and then get started.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Henderson. I am a managing director at Morgan Stanley. I am a physician. I like to think of myself as a recovering emergency medicine physician. Practiced for 22 years at Mount Sinai in New York, and now I have the amazing pleasure of leading health and wellness for the wealth management side of Morgan Stanley. Thank you for being here today.
Hello, good morning. I'm Dee Patel, Managing Director at the Hermitage Hotel here in Nashville, and I've been here 20 years.
Hey everyone, I'm Max Goldberg, co-owner of Strategic Hospitality. We've got some bars and restaurants here in Nashville, and we make a mean tater tot. So,
And thank you for dinner last night. That was fantastic. My name is David Dill. I'm the chairman and CEO of LifePoint Health. We're a diversified healthcare delivery platform and network of hospitals, both behavioral rehab and acute care hospitals, headquartered here in Nashville, Tennessee. And I've been here for 30 years. This is home.
Wonderful. So everybody probably picked up on, we have a healthcare leader, hospitality leader, hotel leader, and then from Dr. Henderson, who has kind of a global view of all those things and how they work together. So Dr. Henderson, talking about that global view, we're going to start there. So you get the first question.
Amazing.
So these industries, and probably anybody in this audience, have dealt with labor challenges and shifts in the last few years. There's been issues with retaining workers, issues with recruitment. There are all kinds of things that are happening that are causing these industries to see labor and productivity in a different way. But it's a long way of saying of how do we get to a place where our recruiting and our retention are back like they once were before the pandemic. So having said that, what are some of the strategies that you've seen that have been the most effective at improving retention and recruiting?
Yeah, it's a great question. It actually is the question. So as I started this conversation, I'm a recovering ER doc, and an ER doc, is a glorified shift worker. That's what we are. And I think the most important thing to remember about shift work is it doesn't start and end with the shift. That's a very big misconception, right? Because these shift workers are people too. So let's pretend that it takes them, I don't know, roughly an hour to get to work, an hour and a half, and an hour and a half to get home. That's time right layered on top of the shift. And every once in a while, even if they're doctors like me, they have to sleep, they have kids, they have all of these things. And what happens is that they cannot sustain what is expected of them because the employer only sees the 12 hours they're on the shift or whatever the length of the shift is, and then the rest of it is just not even cared for. The thing that makes a difference with shift workers in particular is understanding everything that happens before the shift and after the shift, and you're trying to accommodate that. The example I would give that I think makes a big difference, and it doesn't seem like it makes a big difference, simple things like transportation, food, if they need to stay over, like when we had the great big outbreak of the worst pandemic in 100 years, and the doctors had to stay in the hospitals and not go home, accommodations, because many times in Tennessee, just like in New York City, the people who are managing the experience in New York, they don't live in Manhattan. They live in Queens, they live out in Jersey, and it's a hardship for them to come back and forth and back and forth. So you really need to see these people as individuals and not just the duration of their shift, because their shift starts long before it starts and ends long after it's over.
Dr. Henderson, that is an excellent way to think about that. This is not just the shift. There's how you get to the shift, and it's how you close the shift, and it's how you get home. So that's a great setup. And David, we're going to actually come to you because we're talking about shift-based workers in a hospital context. So when we think of large hospitals, the most natural instinct is to think about patients. Having said that, how important is for you, leading a team of over 50,000 employees, to think about the well-being of your caregivers that are caring for those patients?
Thank you for that question. And Dr. Henderson, we have a few ED shifts that are open. And so if you're really contemplating being a recovering ED doctor, I can introduce you to about 60 markets around the country.
Fabulous.
None of which are in New York.
Yeah, we'll talk after the.
Okay. I can sign you up right outside. No, so the well-being is critically important. And we could take this discussion. We don't have a lot of time. We could take it, a lot of different ways. But I think something that's unique, LifePoint has over 50,000 employees spread out throughout the country. We have a really small footprint here in Middle Tennessee and in Nashville. We do have one hospital up in Gallatin, but that's really the only thing that's close to Nashville outside of our corporate staff. Maybe 500 people, 200, 300 live south of town, a couple of hundred live here. And so my involvement with this as it relates to NashvilleHealth is this is home for me. And it's incredibly important that we build a vibrant workforce, health and education to support entrepreneurs like Max and Dee and everybody else that's represented in this room. So it's really important to me. But in our communities, where we're the only hospital in town, I think something that's pretty unique about our footprint is, and my son-in-law is a nurse here in Nashville, but in our communities, we have nurses and doctors not just taking care of people, they're taking care of their neighbor. They're taking care of their Sunday school teacher. They're taking care of their son or daughter's sports coach or school teacher, whoever it is. And so that connectivity between our caregivers, doctors, nurses, and others, and patients that they're taking care of is pretty unique. So when great things happen, and great things happen in hospitals every day, where you get the ha's and everybody's excited because they took care of their neighbor. They took care of somebody that lives down the street or their cousin. But bad things happen in hospitals too. Tough things happen in hospitals too. It's life and death every day. We hear bells and we cure cancer. We hear music in the hospital and we deliver 25,000 babies into this country, into the world. But then there's bad examples that happen inside of an emergency department or in an operating room or upstairs in a med-surg unit. And when that happens, it's not just that a bad outcome happened, it's that's my neighbor. And so protecting the mental well-being of our team is something that we spend a lot of time with. So we have a lot of tools that we can bring with that. But protecting our employees' well-being, and when things like that happen, whether it's a hurricane that just hit in Florida and in Western North Carolina and a few other places in between, or just what seems kind of ordinary sometimes has big impacts on our team members, and protecting the well-being of our people is critically important. Not just protecting the well-being of patients that walk through our doors every day and are counting on us, but our 50,000 caregivers. So we surround them with a lot of resources. And the second example I'll give you is we launched all the way back during Katrina in Louisiana. We launched a life care fund. We had so many people that called and said, how can I help? Can I get in a car? Can I go drive somewhere? Can I bring a chainsaw? Can I bring something to help? And we said the best thing you can do is provide some financial resources and trust that we'll get those distributed the right way. And watching that now all these years later come to life again, and it comes to life every day in small ways, but over 100 people in Western North Carolina have accessed our life care fund that provides financial resources in their most desperate time. And we have probably 30 or 40 employees that have lost literally everything the picture I got yesterday of a home that was flooded, and to be able to come alongside in a small way and almost be seed money to get somebody to that next check or to that next credit card payment or to the next rent payment that needs to be made is something I think is also vitally important that we do as a big company. And the consistency of doing that over time, I think, creates emotional confidence in our team that they know there's somebody there when disaster strikes. And I think that goes a long way in really ensuring that we're protecting the well-being of our people.
Thank you for that, David. And that's a good segue. Now we'll come to D, and then we'll go to Max. But one of the tools in the clinical world that is aimed at the well-being portion is this concept around practice transformation, which really is a response to shifting labor dynamics and some of the things that you came up with. So that's emerging technology, reimagined processes to essentially to relieve that team pressure while improving or stabilizing productivity. But it really is just a reimagining of how we approach the job and using technology and other processes to get to stabilizing that team. D, that concept might not have that name in the hotel industry, but are there similar concepts that kind of relate to that from your context in running Hermitage?
Yeah, absolutely. I think COVID really destroyed our industry because travel stopped. And when travel stopped, hotels stopped serving and welcoming. And so we saw a massive shift of our labor move into different organizations, communities, and industries. And as our industry has come back and coming back, we're obviously struggling with just a lack of workforce that can serve our needs. Nashville's spend last year on tourism, I think, peaked at $10 billion in Nashville. Well, that takes a lot of people to serve those tourists and those guests. And so we've had to find certainly different ways to recruit, retain, really create incentives that are beyond our normal scope. And so simple things like healthcare that provides coverage to domestic partners, knowing that not everyone has a spouse, but perhaps a significant other, and that we can lean into creating value for our employees, or cross-training amongst the property. We know that we have a need, but we know that not every position is going to be filled at all times. And so how do we utilize our resources by cross-training? Technology is great for a lot of things, but it doesn't replace a human connection. And we're in the space of connecting with our guest. And that transfer of emotion that our employees can transfer to our guest simply just cannot be attained by technology, but it can be utilized as a resource to help facilitate certain aspects to limit some of the tasks that perhaps can be replaced with technology. So there are lots of creative ways that we're working and exploring, but really it comes down to also hiring the right people. And we went through a phase of just hiring warm bodies because we needed people. There was this desperate plea of, we've got to get staff on board. We have guests to serve. And it just does an injustice to the individual. It does to the guest. It does to the organization. And so there's a real intentional effort in how we secure, how we promote, how we retain, to really ensure that the betterment of our culture is protected by making sure the right people are in the right spot.
Dee, thank you for that. Max, you had a conversation with me that was really kind of eye-opening. In these industries, you have physicians, that is looked at as a destination job. You have a chef that's looked at as a destination job. But you brought up the fact that the support parts of those jobs are a lot of entry-level positions where somebody needs to work that position on the way to a career goal that may or may not be in that industry. How do you, at Strategic Hospitality, think of that in a way to say, I want this person to be fulfilled, I want this to be a meaningful part in the arc of their journey, but I also have to recognize that this is not the be-all, end-all for them. There is a way for them to grow to what we're doing, but how do you make sure that you are a meaningful part of that journey?
Yeah, I think that for us, we have a real curiosity, even 2 decades in, of asking the question, what can we do today to be a better restaurant group? What can we do to take care of our folks? And, our industry is a race without a finish line, and it's a full contact sport. And as wonderful as I hope dinner was last night, and thank you guys again for the support, it's really like I look at food and drink as a vehicle for conversation. And how do we create these spaces where you can create these memories and have these things kind of occurring? And it all comes down to the people. And if we have some of these restaurants that people are so kind and will hit refresh at midnight to be able to come in and support us, which is just crazy for us, if they come in and we don't execute with those entry people, then we've completely failed Nashville, we've completely failed our company and the guests. And so what we've really tried to lean into, and as we've grown, I think it's become harder and easier, and we now have over 1,000 employees, which is my favorite number to talk about. But for those entry-level people, we try to create a space where reputationally they know we're always going to take the high road and do the right thing, even when it's a really hard thing to do, and support them in whatever their next career would be. And there's a lot of folks that we work with who will come and spend time with us and do a great job, and then we will do everything we can to help put them on to the next thing they want to do. And the greatest kind of joy for me is when we have people who go on to become paralegals, lawyers, nurses, whatever it'll be. They keep us on their resume as a reference, which has nothing to do with their new industry. But to me, when we see those things happening, that's when I know, like, okay, we've done the right thing here. And the reality is it's really hard for me to be in the restaurants as much as I want to be, to have that interaction with staff. And so we constantly try to check in with our managers and with individuals. And I'll just go have conversations with dishwashers of what's meaningful to you, what moves the needle. And we had one guy that was a phenomenal dishwasher who kept leaving early and was about to get fired. And I just said, hey, why are you leaving early? Like, everyone loves you. We want to see you continue to grow. And he's like, well, it's the bus schedule. Like, if I miss my bus, I'm going to be stuck here. And so I very proudly voted for the transit bill yesterday, and I hope it happens. But it was it's something that was occurring. And if I hadn't asked that question, we as a company would have screwed up and lost a great human being, a great employee who was providing for his family over a pretty simple fix. And so I think that as hard as it is, but it's so critical to actually like get into the weeds with these folks and see what actually moves the needle. And some of the best conversations I've had is over staff meal, where we'll sit down and actually have those conversations, which is kind of a sacred thing in our industry, and just hear what really matters, because we in our seats are very lucky to say, well, here's what I think matters. Here's what I think this person wants, and we can provide great resources, great health care, try to have ease of whatever it is that they need. And then you actually talk to them and you're like, oh, I was wrong. But let us continue to be curious and continue to ask ourselves, how can we get better? And it's been great for us. And let me be very clear, we make hundreds of mistakes every day, but I do think that the strive to get better and never doing the same thing over and over again has been our ethos for the past 20 years.
So Max, that's a very nuanced way of looking at your workforce. And you really kind of took the thunder out of the next question because you were so thorough.
This is why I'm not going to get invited back next year. I'm sorry. 1,000 apologies.
I would have rather that happen than the other way around. But the theme of the next question, we were going to stay with you, was going to be around how does your team's ability or inability to live close to where they work impact them? You gave us an anecdote to that. But any more you could just share around, like, I'm seeing this dynamic of my team not being able to live, because from an inflation standpoint, things have cooled a little bit lately, but if you look at an arc, things are still actually way more expensive than they were, and that continues to happen. We have more issues with that than we had before. So are you seeing that kind of globally in your team, period, about like this concept of can I live close to where I work and how that affects how I show up?
Yeah, we're definitely feeling it, and I think the spread is getting greater. And then the transportation in, and we've got some businesses in downtown, it's expensive and hard to find parking. And we have, a couple hundred people at the airport, and the 4 places we have there. We realized that we need to be able to get them through the security piece of it and actually get them bussed in successfully. And so we work with them to make sure that transport is happening. The airport's done a phenomenal job helping us with that. But it's hard. I mean, it's hard to be able to find spaces to live, places to park, and the ease of getting in and out, which, again, I was very proud to vote for that transit bill yesterday, because I think ultimately that is what is going to help bridge the gap, even if it's over the next whatever decades it's going to be. We desperately need that. And the thing that's happening too that we're kind of finding is some of our folks who want to go and go from renters to buyers, it's exponentially more expensive and harder to be able to find housing that can create generational change instead of continuing to rent. And so we've worked with some of our staff to try to create banking relationships and help them kind of bridge that gap. But with success, and I think Nashville is the most exciting, greatest city in the world. I mean, before we got started, I'm looking around the room and seeing just the different faces in this room, and it's just mind-blowing to me that this group is representative from all walks of life. This is Nashville to me, and so I kind of had that moment. But with that success and with that progress, there's a ripple effect of issues that are created, and I think that at some of the shift workers and certain incomes of where they are, it's that much more difficult. And so, with success comes these challenges, and they're not easy. They're hard conversations. So yes, we're seeing that, and we're trying to help, and I do think the spread will continue, but we need to provide better access to public transportation. We need to provide better resources for these folks, because to Dee's point, and she's 100% right, Nashville is only as special as the people taking care of you, and we're going to start to lose those people if we don't be pretty proactive about trying to get ahead of it.
Thank you for that, Max. So, we're hearing a lot of challenge questions. I promise we won't leave it here. One of the things about NashvilleHealth is we like to talk about data and what's happening, and it feels like a challenge, but we are going to start to shift the conversation to what's being done and what can we do as far as a solution to the process. But I do have to ask one more question that's a little bit more related to the challenges. So what David, Max, and Dee have just described is a coordination of things that can lead to burnout. Burnout is real. Burnout is real for those of us that don't work a shift job, but it adds a factor to it when you have to be in a certain place at a certain time, kind of like what you just described about the guy that couldn't get to work and was leaving work before time. So Dr. Henderson, burnout is an issue in these industries. What are some key solutions in addressing employee well-being in these roles that are really physically and mentally demanding?
Yeah, I think that the biggest issue about burnout is that we need to talk about it more. We're usually very reactive, right? Especially in the hospital setting. You worry about burnout after the people are burned out. You have to anticipate this, right? We need to be more front-footed. One of the examples that I'm super proud about at Morgan Stanley, so let me take a big step back. I don't always walk around head to toe dressed in pink, just in case people were wondering out there. But it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, right? And we know that that's super important. I definitely wanted to put that plug in there today. But I can't tell you how many times I have conversations with people at the firm about the importance of mammography. Did you get your mammogram? I don't have time, right? Nobody has time. Who said that? I don't have time for X, Y, and Z. And we understand that, and that can lead to burnout, just that perception of not having the time. So what can you do about that? Well, if you can't get your employees to have the time to go and do it, bring it to your employees, right? We're really trying to be more employee-centric. So instead of people trying to figure out, how can I get this done and get to this meeting and get back to my kid and make my bus and all that, we have vans, right, that roll up in October so women can just sort of run out really quick, get this done, get back to their desk, and go on about their day. And this is just iterations on a theme. Having health care that's available close to where you work, having child care on site, like all of these things will help you anticipate where people burn out, right? If you think about it, where do you feel the pinch points, right? How many people in here, I see a lot of women in here, which always makes me excited. How many people in here know about the sandwich generation? Who's a sandwich? Who's a double-decker sandwich with cheese, right? That's me. Because you have your shift workers that they need to work their shift. They need to make sure that there's someone there to pick up their kid. And by the way, mom is 85 or 86 years old and living alone. So the way I count that, that's 3 jobs, right? That's 3 jobs that you have to handle. The only way you're going to effectively impact the burnout situation is to anticipate the pinch points before they happen and then layer in strategies to try and support employees through it.
That hit close to home. Both my wife and I are in that sandwich generation right now, so it's very, very real. So D, want to come to you and then back to David. So this is where we kind of transition to, this optimal world that we feel like we can actually can create. D, you said something that piqued my interest around, there's a point in time where you just needed people in the door. You just needed the shift to be filled. And that doesn't put, to your point, the hotel in the best situation, and it does not put your worker in the best situation. So in this optimal Nashville, where we have a thriving workforce, where Max doesn't have to worry about the guy leaving early for transit, but they're anchored. These workers are anchored in communities close to where they live. How could that lead to choice in recruiting and choice in job seeking?
I think you have to be in alignment. I think that to me is probably the most, are we philosophically aligned when we're making these decisions? I think recruiting, I think hiring, I think how we select the different positions are all so valuable in our decisions. We make decisions all the day. You said you make 100 mistakes a day. We also make 100 decisions a day. And we're constantly having to make decisions about our business. And it's not just the restaurant. It's not just the rooms. It's not just this one thing. There are so many different dynamics. We employ a collection of employees that are socioeconomically diverse, diverse in ethnicity, background, skill set. And when we make decisions, it's not just surface level decisions. We really have to dig in a little deeper. And the Hermitage Hotel is known as a luxury hotel. It's an institution in Nashville. It's a legacy property. It has 100+ years of generational experiences. It means something to people. There's a lot of vested stewardship there, and guests expect a certain level of service. They expect a certain level of product. We have standards. We have 900 standards every day. It's Super Bowl for us every day. And then we start all over again the next day. And at 9 o'clock, we had a logistics meeting to go through the entire day. And it happens each and every day. And so the amount of time and expense and care that we put into anticipating the needs of the guests who are checking in, who are arriving, who are staying, their arrival journey, their departure journey, there's a lot of effort that goes in. Well, who's collectively delivering those efforts, right? And how are we making those decisions? How do we celebrate those employees and put them in positions that they continue to thrive and they feel like they're making an impact, they feel like they're contributing to the betterment, and give them a pathway to continue to develop. We do have professional servers. Some are short-term, some choose to make that their career and can make a 6-figure salary. It's a lucrative salary. Our industry is not just cleaning rooms and schlepping food. It really is a lucrative industry, and I think that we have to continue to emphasize how lucrative it can be. So I don't know if I went off track there, but I think the culture of service is so paramount to our industry, and it's so paramount to my hotel, that if we expect to deliver that culture of service, what does that mean amongst each other and that culture within us? And that's where making choices is so important, because a wrong choice could lead to a domino effect. We talk about one bad apple in an organization and what that does. Well, putting a manager in a position that's not quite qualified to lead a team, to champion a team, to coach a team, sets us all up for failure. So,
Can I share a quick story? I don't think I've ever told you this, but the Hermitage Hotel is one of my favorite places in the world. And I had something awful happen to me where I had a fire at my house and I had to move into a hotel for a week. And I was lucky enough that the Hermitage was one of the options. And so I went to stay there. And I hope nobody's ever dealt with a fire, but if you had, you just grab stuff quickly. And I randomly grabbed a pair of ostrich cowboy boots, like a flannel shirt and a hat. And I had a little French bulldog who's still around named Jolene. And every morning at 6:30 in the morning, I'd walk her down that incredible grand staircase. And because it was just quickly, all I had was like a flannel shirt, a hat low, and cowboy boots, 6:30 in the morning. And your staff couldn't have been nicer. And they got to know Jolene, my dog. So in the morning, they didn't say hi to me. They said good morning to Jolene. And then they started to have water bowls and food waiting. And it was the coolest moment of my life. It gives me goosebumps to tell the story, that as I was coming back up the stairs and your staff was like, oh, good morning, Jolene. They opened the door, everything, walking up the grand staircase. And some tourists in from like Iowa or something looked over like, which country star is that? And it was just like, it was my 15 minutes of fame. And I was like, I'm a nobody, but I'll let this ride. And that happened because of your staff taking care of us. And you turned something really dark into something beautiful. And that's what's so great about our industry is you literally changed my life in that moment through the culture you've created with your staff.
I so appreciate that. But that's what our industry does in Nashville, and that's what makes Nashville so special. And I love that we're having this dynamic conversation to help continue to protect that, because that's something that's so beautiful. And the one comment that we have gotten, and I've been at the hotel for 20 years, the number one single comment from our guests consistently is, you have the friendliest staff. Well, that's a testament to the community that we live in. That's a testament to Nashville.
So, those are great stories, and they weave together something that I'm going to put together for you, David. But you talk about the sandwich generation, the fact that you have our elder population, those that are mid-careerists, they may have kids as well. Dee, you're really talking about, to Max's point, whoever you hired that made him feel like that, I'm guessing that there was some choice in making that hire, and I'm guessing that there was some choice in that person doing the job seeking such that they found the right fit. But these workforces are multi-layered. Using myself as an example, when I first started working, I was in a context, I think we all were, where we saw the employer as the asset, and we just wanted to catch on with the employer. Now, this is a generalization. There are exceptions. Now we're in a dynamic where people see themselves as the asset that the employer should pick up. David, to that point, you, with the large team you have at LifePoint, have multi-generations in your buildings. Some came in under the asset, like the organization's asset mindset, but now you've got newer ones that are like, no, I only want to work for a place that mirrors my vision and values. And in the current labor environment, they do have that choice. So how has LifePoint adjusted to that in a way and seen it as an opportunity going forward to be relevant to multiple generations in the same workforce?
It's an interesting question, and when I think about our hospitals and the communities that we serve, I was just doing a little video shoot for somebody that had celebrated, this is hard to believe, but their 60th anniversary of working in the same hospital in a small town in West Virginia. So I did this little 2-minute video, 60 years, that's a long time. And I was doing this video, and she was wishing her well in retirement. And they said, no, she's not retiring. I'm like, all right, let's start over. The beautiful part about technology, scrap it, let's start over again. But anyway, it's a reminder of whether someone is 75 years old in that case, 76 years old, all the way down to the brand new student out of school that we're aggressively recruiting every day. And we're actually even getting further upstream on people that are wanting to get into the healthcare profession that may not have all the qualifications yet, but we can bring them into some apprentice programs to make sure they are pursuing something that they're passionate about, but also to develop this pipeline. So kind of extending out the tail as long as we can and extending and improving the funnel of new people coming in is critically important to a workforce that's challenged around the country. It's not just here in Nashville, it's everywhere. So making sure that our teams, I was at a meeting with a researcher who has done a lot of work on how generations work together. And he asked, raise your hand if you were born in this time period. And he said, the baby boomers, raise your hand. And there's probably a few in this room, raise your hand. And as soon as he said that, he said, now the baby boomers, how many of you have on your gold watch that you got for working at your employer for 30 years? And almost every one of them raised their hand again. But it really points to this, the workforce is changing and evolving, and it's important. It's important for me to understand that, but it's really important for the CEOs of our hospitals to understand that we have to work in different ways and meet people where they want to be met versus putting them all into the same type of PTO program or the same type of benefits program when we have people ranging from early 20s to someone in their 60s and 70s and beyond. So we've done a lot of things. One of the things that we have done is we partnered with Venture Studio in New York to really help us listen to our people. I love what the example you gave, Max, of listening to someone that was getting ready to leave. How do you make this big company We have 50,000 employees. You're a big company. You have 1,000 people. Every single one of them are important. And the impact that you made on that person's life, not just solving a problem, but he'll be talking about that or she'll be talking about that for the rest of their life. That somebody cared enough about me and my role in this big company to pause and say, what's going on and how can we help? And so it's just a great reminder for all of us up here and everybody here to listen, and how do we make these big, complex organizations feel a little bit smaller? And so one of the things that we do is through our Venture Studio partnership is we have sent teams of entrepreneurs around to listen to our team members, listen to where the pain points are, and develop new pieces of technology that can help solve these problems. For example, and I could give you many of them, one of them is around scheduling. Versus telling a new student that you've got to fit into this historical scheduling model that we've always used, and you're the low person on the list, and we're just going to jam you into whatever schedule, maybe without even asking, do you have a bus to catch? Or do you have an aging parent to take care of? Or do you have a kid that's in between childcare and daycare that doesn't work? But we're building a piece of software, and it will be a company that will be commercialized on giving nurses in particular more power over when they choose to work, and empowering our team members to swap shifts to meet their team members' demands, when the skill set, of course, matches up. So there's a lot of controls in there. But that piece of technology was birthed out of listening to our people on what do they need to help solve this generational issue that we have, versus new nurses coming out. My more seasoned nurse says they don't make them like they used to, they don't work hard enough, kick them out. And we have this same problem. That's not going to solve anything. Right. It's not going to help quality. It's not going to help service. It's not going to advance what we've got to advance in a fractured workforce. But we can bring real solutions, and we do that not because there's just a great piece of technology sitting out on the West Coast that somebody decided to put together and sell to us, but we listen to our own people. And then we bring those people into an advisory board that can help shape that product. Those are just little examples of how we have really engaged our workforce by listening to them. Maybe not solving something as simple as Max solved, but how big what Max solved. But by listening, we can bring real solutions that fit the pain points of what our workforce is dealing with.
And see, I love that you said that, because you laid out these examples, and the one thing that none of us have talked about is just like, oh, we'll solve it by giving them more money. And that, especially with the newer workforce, that's not it. That's really not the answer they're looking for. They want to know, do you get me? Like, it's not the finances. Do you get my gym schedule? Do you get my need to meditate? Do you get my need to, travel or to not be available? I'm not going to answer your email at 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, do you get me? And I think for this, especially for the new workforce, like I have a 23-year-old who has very specific opinions and requirements. And I'm like, Josh, you've been working for 30 seconds. But he's like, yeah, but I'm the important one. The money is almost sort of second fiddle to the lifestyle, to the experience, to, like your earlier point, the experience of your guests. It's the experience of our workforce.
To that example, we have our vacation programs that are put in place, and we're proud of them, and we try to get standardized so it's easier to administer. But I was recently visiting one of our hospitals, and one of the things I try to do, there's a few decisions I make, but a big piece of my job is modeling the behaviors that I expect of our leaders around the country. And so as I go out to our hospitals and around the hospitals and talk to people, I came across a young nurse and asked her what was important to her. And she said, the problem I have with the vacation plan, all I really want to do is take my birthday off. That was important to me. So she could celebrate with her family or with her spouse. But those little things, like just listening, gives us insights into it may work for this portion of the workforce because it's always been that way. Doesn't make it right, but it's always been that way. But for someone like that, it was something that was slightly different, and that was critically important to her. And I can go over here and I get my birthday off. I'm like, we can solve that. Mm-hmm. We can solve that even within the construct of our existing program, but we can celebrate that too in a different way. So you're right. I mean, everything is changing. The generations, we have 4 or 5 generations that are in our workforce today, and those each create, you need them all. I think they all make each other better. But it's like really embracing and understanding the greatness of each of those generations, but also meeting them where they want to be met.
So this conversation is actually incredibly important. Like, our economy in Nashville gets increasingly sophisticated with derivatives off of these industries, but the core really is hospitality, healthcare, entertainment and leisure that people have to show up for. That conversation that David just had, it could have come from Max about his workforce, could have come from Dee, could have come from you, Dr. Henderson. So Max, coming back to you, to use an example and come back to this theme of we take care of those who take care of us, it makes things easier to take care of themselves. Like, you and I don't necessarily need to live next to the hospital, the hotel, but our team does. So that's a universal kind of a concept that goes through this. But Max, do you see an opportunity for industry leaders in the restaurant business, the hotel business, the healthcare business to advocate for a situated and thriving workforce, and what might that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I'm incredibly bullish on Nashville. I sit here, and I think Dee would agree, like, this is one of the absolute greatest cities to work in from a hospitality perspective. One of the things that we've done that's just kind of an experience share that might apply not necessarily to the LifePoints of the world, but maybe some of the smaller firms that are kind of coming up, is we recognized maybe 7 years ago that we definitely were not the smartest people in the room. We have known that forever, but really knew it maybe 7-10 years ago. And we started looking at the people that we had worked with and asked them, what are you passionate about? What do you want to do? What do you want to create? And we kind of shifted what we were doing to help support those with systems and processes and tools to be successful. And the results of it, and when I say this, it's a complete brag on the people that are doing it, not our company at all. But we opened up Henrietta Red, and Julia is an owner in that restaurant. So she was no longer just a chef, she was an owner, and it's a different mindset. Julia, who I've known since first grade, was a James Beard finalist, which is like the Oscars of food for us, and I think created one of the most awesome restaurants in Nashville. Trevor Moran, where you guys ate last night, was Food and Wine's Restaurant of the Year, and New York Times, top 10 in America. That's all Trevor. He's an owner in that restaurant. It's a different mindset. Brian and Lena, who are a husband and wife couple we worked with forever, they had this great idea of this Japanese barbecue spot called Kisser over in East Nashville. That's their passion that we get to be a part of. They just got Best New Chefs in America. We're working on a project with Brian Baxter, who was our former chef at Catbird. We hope to do the same thing with. And it's been a little bit of a shift where we help support those to execute what they're passionate about. And it allows us to kind of focus on what we do well and then support them. And it's just been awesome for us. And that's creating real change for their families, for their communities. And they drive in their friends and their workforce. And it's been a really fun model for us to give real equity and generational change to the people we work with.
So Max, thank you for that. Dr. Henderson, in this optimal world where we're imagining that we know that we can get to if we have the intent to do it, we're talking about why this is good for our workforce and our teams, but it's also good for business.
Yes.
So let's talk about the business aspect and the business case for it. In this optimal world where we don't have the transit issues, we don't have the high rising cost issues that our teams are dealing with, and those things are non-issues, how does that put them in a better position to be able to compete solely on the quality of their service and their product, which is another way of saying to compete for talent? How does it lead to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I love the optimal state. If we could get there, we could I could envision a world where the focus really is on the employee, because as the employee goes, the business goes, right? That's just that they are inextricably linked together. As our employees are more successful, as they feel more engaged, as they have more of a stake in the business. I mean, I love the account that Max just gave about the chefs that are owners. And it's important even at Morgan Stanley, right? We have started a program where our colleagues can become owners through the employee stock purchase program. We know that ownership matters. It's a big deal. When you're not just transactional, this is my house. This is where I live. When you have the employee carrying your water, when they're proud of the label that's on the front of their shirt, when they're, excited to wear the Morgan Stanley blue, you got there, right? That's when you know that you have achieved the goal, because you're not working towards something alone, you're working towards something together, right? If you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, you go together. You have to go together.
Thank you for that, Dr. Henderson. To this point, and we're going to take a liberty here, I'm coming around to UD, but a lot of us are familiar with the fact that at these fine dining restaurants, you can earn a Michelin designation. To Dr. Henderson's point about your team and your staff having to be situated and feeling good about themselves to do that, we can celebrate really quickly that Dee's team became the first hotel to earn a Michelin designation in Nashville. So let's clap for that. So Dee, to her point about the team getting there, how does fulfillment, belonging, feeling like you're in the right job, just your overall culture led to such an amazing achievement?
First of all, thank you, and congratulations to all of your accolades. Henrietta Red is my favorite restaurant, by the way, and I do love Druzy Indoor, and I'm very biased, but it's always on my list when someone's asking me, where do I dine in Nashville? I think it's a testament to the legacy of the team that has spanned beyond the current space that we're in. I think that's the culture of service. And when we think about work-life balance, which I still am trying to figure out what that is in my own world, and it changes quite often, and that's why we have to be so curated with our teams and offer a plethora of options and flexibility that we can within our means so that they can pick and choose sort of where they fit in, and so that they feel that they're part of something and they are part of a legacy property. And to receive the news of the Michelin Keys, I found out when everyone else found out. I had no idea. There was no, here's embargoed information, by the way, leading up to this day. And that to me was such a testament to the team and their ongoing contribution, but also that they feel like they're at a place where they are contributing, because it just doesn't happen with one person or one department or one area. It's a collective force. And if we continue that momentum of the culture of service, that permeates within the team, amongst their colleagues. They feel fulfilled. They feel like they are contributing. They're able to express that emotion that technology simply cannot replace. We're just not where hospitality can do that. And I think we all have this shared commonality of, it's really simple as humanity. We're here to really serve some very fundamental basics. And it's not a gift to be well. It should be a very basic function of our day-to-day living, whether we are a server, a valet parker, a housekeeper, or a manager of some sort.
Gretchen, where are we on time? 5 more minutes, okay. So in keeping this solutions oriented and things that we can be excited about, like we recognize the challenges that are before us, there's always a way to see a challenge as an opportunity instead of a threat. And I appreciate how that has come out. Max, we know you're bullish on Nashville, but I'm going to ask the whole panel the same question. David, we'll start with you. What are you just excited about for the future of Nashville, the future of your business, the future of the industry, any way you want to put that? What excites you?
Well, I'll start with our company. I mean, it's an exciting company to be part of. It's a very mission-driven company. We talk about our mission all the time. I spend every fall meeting with all of our CEOs and trying to help connect them back into the mission of the company. What does our mission mean to you? And how do you live that out every day? So stay very, very focused as we kind of wind up a year and get ready to start a new year. Bring it all back to the things that are the most important. Creating experiences, I can easily see that in both of your businesses, but very much in our business as well. It's creating experiences for people. So as technology advances, making sure that we never lose sight of that human interaction that will maybe not never be replaced, but for most of what we do will never be replaced. And adopting the right technology to wick away all those things where a doctor is looking down at a keyboard, banging away at something, only to save time for them to have that face-to-face, eye-to-eye interaction with somebody that's trusting them. That's really exciting for me. So harnessing all this technology in a way that makes the relationship, the human interaction, even more special than it is today. That's something that excites me. And for Nashville, this has been home for 30-something years. I hope it's home for the next 30-something years. And I couldn't be more bullish about this city as well. When we have leaders like you have up here, and we've got the tailwinds of the city, we do have our own challenges, but we're centrally located. We have so many great things going for ourselves. I do think we have some big issues to resolve around transportation, education, and why Senator Friss has gathered us here to build a more healthy, resilient workforce, to fund all these entrepreneurs and to help fuel all these entrepreneurs that are doing incredible things in this city. So of all the places I go, I grew up in a small town. I love going to my mom. I love sitting on the couch with my mom and falling asleep on the couch. That's home for me. But when I think about all the other places that I could be, there's no greater place than Nashville. I think that's been true over the last couple of decades, and it's even going to be more true over the next couple.
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that 70% of the U.S. population is within a 2-hour flight. I love the fact of what's happening at the airport. I love that when I have conferences, whatever, they're like, oh, Nashville, we're in. It's not like one of those cities that people dread. The fact that people want to come here, I don't take for granted. The fact that we have so many cranes in the city is incredible. I'm so excited for Nashville Yards and what's happening over there. I think that's an absolute game changer for the city. I'm so excited for the East Bank, for the Titans, all of that momentum we read about. But then also the special sauce of, I became friends with DeAndre Hopkins, who sadly, may be going somewhere else right now. But I took him over to Ken Levitan's house for one of the coolest music events in Nashville. And looking around at the people in the room who deeply cared and were there and embraced someone new to the city, it doesn't happen everywhere. Like, that is one of the absolute coolest things in the world to me. And then you take it all the way back to the people who have really shaped the city. And I even remember sitting down with Senator Friss, and he took the time to say, like, what can we be doing better? I don't know if that happens in other cities. I've spent a lot of time in other cities. But the Ken Levitans, the Kerry Macks, the Senator Friss of the world, they're not going to do that in a lot of other cities. But Nashville is a one phone call away, 1 degree of separation until people realize you're full of shit. And then the door slams shut. And I love that about Nashville, that it's one of those things where if you care, you're kind, and you want to be a good steward of the community, Nashville will open its arms to you, which is why I think Nashville is the greatest city in the world.
Gosh, I concur with so many things that you both have already said. I think it starts with, why are we having this discussion today, right? It's because we've got amazing stakeholders and we have people who care, and we are asking the why. I have why meetings every Monday at my hotel, and it's like, well, why did this happen? Well, why did that happen? And you get to the crux of it, and you can't always just fix it overnight. But I'm excited and hopeful and optimistic that there is a collection and a community within all sectors that are coming together asking these really tough questions, because we do have challenges. There's no question about that. How we approach it, who we work with, how we work together are all things that I'm extremely excited to be part of and to see come to fruition.
So Dr. Henderson, you have more of a global framing, but from the external standpoint, how do you think about Nashville's future in some of these comments?
So full disclosure, I am not from Nashville. But
Yet.
But what I'm excited about, really, in terms of this event, is that Morgan Stanley is here, right? I couldn't be more proud of supporting an event like this, because it aligns perfectly with our core values, right? We are leading with exceptional ideas. We are putting clients first, because you're all clients. Even if you're not a Morgan Stanley client yet, you're all Morgan Stanley clients. Like, we're putting the ideas that are important front and center. We're here, we're rolling up our sleeves, we're figuring it out, we're at the table, because we know that all good ideas start at home, right? I don't believe in the trickle-down theory, right? Things coming from on high and landing on your head. I've been in a hospital for 24 years, and there are all kinds of good ideas that came down from the ivory tower, and most of them weren't that good. But if you want to help, if you want to put clients first, right? Our new CEO is characterized by saying the most important things: clients, clients, and clients. You got to be there. You got to be present. You have to listen. You have to be willing to get your hands dirty and get it done. That's why I'm excited to be here. That's why I flew here and arrived at midnight last night, because you asked, am I going to be here? Yeah, I'm going to be here. I'm in.
Well, that is an amazing way to end the panel. Can we give everybody a round of applause?